Hi. So in this short video, I would like to tell you about how ensuring that citizens view CVE policy and practices as legitimate can increase cooperativeness and support from the public at large. My name is Oluf Gøtzsche-Astrup. I am a psychologist and I am an assistant professor at political science at Århus University. The study that I want to talk about is situated within a larger project where we investigate CVE policy in the Nordic countries, Nordic approaches in general to handling extremism. We do this in Denmark and Sweden and Norway and Finland. In this study, we start by saying that ordinary citizens and communities have had an increasingly large role to play in CVE policy across the Nordic countries in the past decades. What can also be called co-production of countering violent extremism. But we also know that the kind of including citizens can be a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, we don't want people to underreport. We want people to actually contact authorities rather than themselves trying to solve worries about radicalization. On the other hand, we don't want over-reporting where even kind of ordinary behavior is seen as signs of radicalization, or where people rely on biases or stereotypes to begin overwhelming authorities with kind of cases. We focus on a very basic idea to kind of investigate what matters in terms of getting citizens to contact the right place, namely policy legitimacy. So the idea that a certain policy is appropriate for the issue at hand, that it includes interests of stakeholders such as NGOs, that it hears the citizens that might be impacted by it, and that there are oversight measures, and that it is transparent in kind of its implementation at the practitioner level as well. We surveyed 14,000 respondents in Denmark and Norway and Sweden and Finland, and with a focus on kind of the 8 largest cities in these countries. We used an experimental method where we asked half the participants in this survey to consider a new policy that was legitimate in the sense that it was presented as having bipartisan support in Parliament, that it ensured a fair process for people suspected of radicalization, and that there were oversight in the implementation of it, and that NGOs supported it in terms of civil rights. And the other half of participants we presented with a case about a policy that was only narrowly passed through Parliament, where some NGOs had criticized it for potentially violating some civil rights, and that had weak oversight in its implementation. And we then asked everyone to consider a case where someone they knew peripherally began talking about the necessity of dramatic changes to the democratic system, explicitly began supporting groups considered extremist by the government. And then we asked people how they would react in such a situation, from not doing anything at all to contacting the person themselves, to actually contacting authorities, whether that be social services, police, or calling a national hotline to get advice. And overall, we found what we expected, namely that the people who were presented with a legitimate policy, well, they also were more willing, or indicate they were more willing to contact authorities to handle suspected radicalization or worry about it. And those who read about the illegitimate policy were more likely to either do nothing or take matters into their own hand and try and solve the situation themselves. Overall, we believe that this study shows that the citizenry at large in the Nordic citizens perceive the legitimate CVE policy to be important, even in countries such as ours, where trust in general is high, where the perceived legitimacy of our political system is high. And in particular, we believe that for practitioners, engaging with legitimacy could be a good way to ensure that contact between citizens and practitioners, whether it is social workers or police officers or teachers, can be productive in terms of facilitating co-production of CVE policy. We think this can be done through a focus on ensuring that the policy also seems appropriate and inclusive on kind of the street level, where practitioners can take up the discussion of legitimacy and is open to discussing it, and where focus is actually on telling stories about successful interventions, where authority interventions have actually helped people disengage, de-radicalize from extremist groups. Although this does not speak to all the contextual differences, we think that this can be one tool in the practitioner toolbox to use. Thank you.